Thanks for joining the Mike on Mike show. Tonight we have Representative Dwayne Yunker joining us, and he's going to talk about the latest call to action, which essentially tells the state, stop forcing us to deal with this in the way that you want us to. So anyway, thanks for joining me.
Thanks. Thank you. Call to action is basically let cities manage their homeless population the way they see fit. We elect people to make that decision here locally. In the city of Grants Pass, we have 8 counselors to make that decision, and a majority of them should come together. And obviously, a former city councilor, that's why they put you in office, to make a decision what's best for your city, not for a state policy that says that was set up in a. Well, now let's talk about that policy a little bit. So, in 2021, then Speaker Kotek, now the governor, brought that bill forward. It's HB3115 under the, I would say, a ruse that basically said this was the law of the land, and they were taking that from the Martin versus Boise case, which later turned into the Johnson versus Grants Pass case.
Right, and just to clarify, that suggested that fining people or issuing them tickets for camping in public was somehow cruel and unusual punishment.
Under the 8th Amendment.
Under the 8th Amendment of the Constitution.
Yes.
And so the HB 3115 has sort of that basis in it?
Yes, they took the Martin case, and you can see the testimony back then. You can go back, and this is on the legislative website. Everything that's testified in a committee or anything is recorded. You can go back and watch it. And they said that this is the law of the land now, basically. But there was one part of it that most people don't see. There's a lawyer from Hillsborough that actually testified, and he said there's a very likely that this could be overturned by the Supreme Court, which we know in Grants Pass that's what happened. Was it was overturned for everybody but the state of Oregon cities because of HB 3115. And what we're asking, myself as a legislator and other legislators, I brought it to the floor already, and all Republicans voted for it. And we did have 7 Democrats vote for it.
Wow.
So we needed 31. We got to 28, and we had 3 Republicans out that day. We needed 31 to have a floor discussion and a vote on it. And
Wait a minute. You had 28.
Yeah.
And you needed 31, and 3 Republicans were not there?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, they were gone that day. But I'm not sure that would still end up any different, though, because to explain what a bill poll is. So when you write bills and you send them to what they do, they send them to the Speaker's office, and then they delegate them to committees. My bill, which is HB 2432, which repeals 3115, was sent to the Homelessness Committee, which is chaired by Pam Marsh. It never got a hearing. Pam Marsh would not allow us to have a hearing. And the hearing is not a vote on it. A hearing actually allows people to come in and discuss it and talk about the problems with this or whatever subject it is. And people could testify. We never got that right to do that. People in Grants Pass or anybody in the state cannot talk about the problem with 3115. So HB 2432 never got a hearing. So what you can do is you could do a motion on the floor and pull that bill directly to the floor out of that committee. And that's what I did last week, was pull that bill straight to the floor. And I could do that as many times as possible. And so at that time, it was a 28 to 24 vote. 24 for it, 24 against. You need 31. So I was a few short. Doesn't mean I'm not going to try again. So the call to action is really basically, we're going to talk more about this, is to put pressure on legislators to vote, to allow the people to have a vote. You put us in the office, let us talk about it. So we have 28. That means the majority of people, legislators, know it's a problem.
So the 7 Democrats that you got,
yes,
are they from counties that are having this type of issue?
I'm not sure about that. I think the ones that voted on were very we're in areas that are very slim margin for their win. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, gotcha. In
So-
other words, they have some red constituency.
Yes, they're one of their margins by maybe 100 or 200 votes, so they have to.
So they can go back and say, yeah, I voted for that.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, so-
It's the same thing. We pulled a bill for illegal immigrants that have been convicted of a felony. We're talking about felony, convicted. We're not talking about, someone just walking the street. We want to, if you've been convicted of a serious felony, we pulled the bill to the floor just a couple weeks ago, and we had a few Democrats vote with us too, because we're like, well, if they've been convicted of a felony, this is not just some of the traffic ticket. We're knocking on doors.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, we're talking about people that committed serious crimes that we want to be able to call ICE and say, hey, this felony person needs to be taken care of. Of course, the ones that are in those moderate areas voted for. I know that's not what we came tonight.
And you would think that they would want the funding that is being spent on, incarcerating such a person to go into the hands of the feds and no longer be their issue.
You would think that we would get rid of our problems and give them to the feds to do what they want.
That just makes sense.
Well, we live in Oregon.
Yes, I know.
You haven't figured out things are kind of upside down, backwards.
Yes.
And you would think common sense would come out and say, oh, these are bad people. This is not, some guy picking crops. It's, trying to make a living, or, someone cleaning whatever. These are people committing felony crimes,
Yeah, I would think that we could all be in agreement on that.
I would hope. I think the numbers, the polls are on our side. That I think it's around 70-80% in Oregon would say we want to get rid of the bad actors in our state. We don't want people committing crimes on people.
I don't understand. Why don't Democrats want law, order, safety, just like the rest of us do? I mean, that just makes sense to me. And I have to believe that even here in Grants Pass, there's a lot of people that are, dyed-in-the-wool Democrats that don't want this anymore and understand the situation that we're dealing with about 80% addled drug users and, maybe 20% unfortunate homeless. And you would think that they would want those people somehow either removed or disincentivized to be here and go do whatever it is that they're going to do somewhere else instead of in their neighborhood around their children. I
speak to people outside of our city and county all the time, and a lot of them don't know what HB3115 was. They don't know because most people are not paying attention here. Yeah. They're doing their regular day, but they'll complain about the homeless. I was eating dinner, I'm usually gone 4 nights a week, so we're in session, and I was eating dinner, and these two ladies and I didn't know who they were. They asked me what I'm doing here, and I'm like, well, I'm a state representative, and so they asked me a couple questions, and the homeless thing came up, and they don't even know about homeless, why the homeless have what we have nowadays. And it's hard to explain to them, well, this bill was passed back then, and, cities are, required to give time, place, and manner, and, give all these things changed off of a law that wasn't really codified because it never went to the Supreme Court. It was, only on the Ninth Circuit, which we know the Ninth Circuit's the most highly contested and turned over court there is. Yeah, that's right. So they, I would say that the Democrat Party that passed it, Governor Kotek was the chief sponsor on this. She knew what was going to happen. So at times I go, well, why did they do this? Or why did they? I have to feel that they're doing it for other reason, maybe the NGOs. I mean, yeah, you could follow the money. You always talk to these groups, and they're always about getting grants and money. I'm like, well, when is it going to run out? Or as you can see right now, a lot of that money is drying up. We're not going to have all this money.
Well, right at the end of the Biden administration, though, there was just an unfettered blowing out of money to all these nonprofits. Yes. And it was billions and billions of dollars. So they probably have a war chest to take them through, 2-3 years maybe. Well,
what our state did the last 4 years is we leveraged a lot of federal dollars. We used a lot of it for Medicaid stuff, which in Oregon we're actually giving, illegals Medicaid. We're giving everybody Medicaid. You know, the city, County of Grants Pass went from 15 to 50% of the population on Medicaid. That's a lot in, just the last few years. All that money's going to come to an end, and all that COVID money was pushed into the into our, the cities or the schools and all this thing, or other nonprofits. And now we have a new administration and saying, hey, we've been spending way too much money. So it's going to be pulled back. That they're not going to be able to have all this money going towards homelessness.
So, is there any response by legislators to what Gavin Newsom is saying right now, where he's saying, you got to shut these camps down. You got to clean this up, whatever. I'm assuming he's running for president, so this is his.
I would say it's a political reason too, but there is a few other of like myself, Republicans, saying, "Hey, where are the homeless going to come? They're going to come to some place like Oregon, because we have these rules that they get, special rights is what I call them, special rights,
right? That
you must give me a place to sleep, do whatever I want." And there's nothing much you can do, especially like a city like Grants Pass, where the other thing is more frustrating about HB3115 is I went and got what's called a LC opinion, which is a legal opinion from the state of Oregon, which you have these attorneys that work for Oregon. And I would say it was a mandate that was unfunded for us. I think it's a mandate.
Oh, totally.
But they don't think that. The lawyers do not believe it's not an unfunded mandate. And I'm like, well, have you ever been to Grants Pass when we're spending thousands and thousands?
Well, there's a mandate and it's unfunded. So,
and you're not supposed to pass things that are unfunded mandate. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So if you're going to pass something, you have to fund it.
Right.
You can't just say you must do this and then not give us the money.
It'd be like them telling us that we have to spend, $10,000 more per student and say, that's on you.
Yes.
You've got to collect some special tax or something.
You must figure it out.
Yeah, you just figure, there you go.
Well, that's what they did to the city of Grants Pass.
Yeah, indeed.
And when I say Grants Pass, I say the taxpayers, because that's who funds things here,
that's right.
Is the taxpayers. And I would say that you made us do things. We had to get it ADA approved, which it's just crazy that we have to do.
How do you do that? That seems like an infinitely moving goalpost, because ADA, how do you make a parking lot ADA compliant?
I would say, well, go even back up. You can't go to Walmart and say, well, all the handicap spots are taken. You must give me more.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, you may remember this. It was not long after I got here. It was probably 05, 06. There was a guy that was going around making a living. He'd go into some establishment and determine somehow they were non-ADA compliant and sue them. That's how he was making his living, and somehow, we paid this guy off, got rid of him somehow. But this seems like a similar thing.
It's very similar that we have to provide all this ADA approved, but you go to most businesses, they might have 2 parking spots or 3 parking spots, but now we have to do a whole place now that has to be ADA approved or accessible for these people.
Right.
And you cannot challenge, and then the core thing is you can't challenge their disability or ask them, is it their fault, or what did they do, or anything. You can't ask these questions. That's not part of the lawsuit.
And you also can't ask, what about the impact of this on the 5th and A neighborhood there? And it's, there's a couple that comes to every single meeting now complaining about this because their life is horrific now. They live right across the street from, 150 drug zombies.
And the thing is, we've been doing this for years. No matter where you would put this thing, if it was on J Street or whatever street, there's going to be the not in my backyard people. And I agree with them. Is like, how about your peace and love and of your property and quietness and enjoyment.
Well, I really love this was your last meeting at the city council where you're saying, it's not the homeless people, it's the conduct.
It is.
And if these were, imagine, 1930s, work camps or whatever, these were people that were very poor, but they weren't degenerate losers. You know, I mean, they weren't drug addicts. You know, they I would imagine that some of those people probably stole from the community, but it was literally so they could eat. And this is not what's happening here.
No, we know the theft is up. If you're going to do drugs, you have to steal because you don't have infinity money. You know what I'm saying? You can only get so much.
But you want infinity drugs.
Yes, you want these drugs. So how are you going to get your drugs? If your TANF and SNAP are not going to, you run out of that, you're going to steal.
Right.
That's just part of the game. Most of these people that are locked up in jails or whatever, usually for crimes, are related to drugs. You just don't. Most of us just run around.
Every one of these camps has a bicycle chop shop in it, basically.
Exactly.
You know, they're stealing bicycles and tearing them apart and selling the parts.
I have always told my kids is like, most adults don't run around in a BMX bike. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's not how we get around. And we know usually a 10-speed or a mountain bike or something. Most of us ride a bigger adult-sized bike. When you see a 30, 40, 50-year-old riding a Huffy bicycle, well, it's probably stolen.
I would respect it if the guy acquired the bike legally and he needed it to go to a job or something, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
No, yeah. Or you see 2 or 3 bikes, they're stolen, and that was some kid's bike. You know, that's some parent that went to work and had to buy that, all that stuff. And
it's a hidden tax.
It
in
is.
a manner of speaking. You know, higher crime rates. It's just another tax. Another burden.
And you wonder when you drive around town, you wonder why cops are not pulling people over for expired tags or all this other thing, because they're too busy dealing with this situation that the state has burdened on us. They don't have time to deal with common things that cops used to do when I was a child. You know, going too fast or pulling people over for unregistered cars. You know, all these things. Your windshield's cracked, unsafe things. They're too busy going to call because there's too many crazy people doing crazy stuff. Yeah. Last night I guess there was something going on here in town with some gunfire. This wasn't the town I grew up in. There was always some yahoos here and there, but not drug out crazy people doing what we're doing. I mean, I don't think this HB3115 is ever going to help anybody. Just like Measure 110 didn't help anybody. Right. It didn't fix any problems. It just made it worse. What makes things better is accountability for people's actions.
That's right.
That's what's going to work. Now, I'm not saying we don't need treatment or mental health. What I'm saying is,
listen, I think the money that is going to all these nonprofits to continue to support people in their lifestyle they don't want to leave, that money should be spent on mandatory drug treatment. And you have mandatory drug treatment, jail, or a bus ticket. And, some people will think that that's really harsh, but you know what? I think there has to be a solution to this problem that we come to. And that's not happening right now.
Well, I think you would, with rules like that, well, and I'm not saying I agree with every one of your rules, but I'm just saying if you had accountability, the people that really just are not drug addicts or whatever else, they would rise to the top and
of course,
help because they're not doing all the crazy stuff. You know what I'm saying? They're just trying to live. Right. They're trying to get by. And I think we would see those people and go, hey, we can help these people.
Right.
But all the drug addicts that don't want to get help because they're doing their drugs would be taken care of.
I have a lot of conversations about this, and it all comes down to that conclusion in the end is that, the unfortunate homeless, we can help them. Because they're easy to help because they don't want to be where they're at.
No, I don't think no one wants to be homeless. That's
right. But the people who the price of not being homeless is too high for them because they have another need that they have to fill. They're never going to go for that. This is why the Mission has so many empty beds in it.
Yeah, well, it used to have so much more people go in there because there was accountability in our town. And they'd say, well, if you didn't fix it, you can go to the Mission or you can go to jail or get out of town or whatever.
Right.
And so I better get to the Mission and get do something with my life, and there was a little bit more teeth into it for them.
Right.
And to go to the housing thing, what the government is this housing first thing.
That's a nightmare.
You're a contractor, I think.
Yeah.
When you build government housing, it's costing 2 to 3 times or more to build what a normal house would be.
Right.
You and I can build a house so much cheaper. They've testified up there at the legislature, and I'm like, $450 a unit for a 2-bedroom?
Yeah, no.
I mean, we could. It's ridiculous how much you're paying with your tax dollars and my tax dollars to build 1 unit for homeless people or low income people.
Right, and they're going to trash it out almost right away. I worked in San Francisco for a number of years, and there was one area that had project housing in it, and it would just look like a burned out slum. They tore it down, built a brand new one right across the street from it. Within like 2 or 3 years, it looked almost the same, because you're putting people in there that don't care about it, And if it isn't a housing problem, if you put drug addicts in, free apartments or whatever, they're just going to destroy them, because it's not in their nature to maintain things.
And there's, again, no accountability for them for their actions too. It's like having a bad renter. I'm a landlord. I think maybe I mean,
I'm not residential anymore. I did that for many, many years, and being a residential landlord has 2 jobs to it, but one of them is being a social worker. Because you have to deal with people that they can't pay their rent this month and all this sort of thing. And listen, I'm a compassionate guy. I understand things happen with people, and I just set something up. Well, here, listen, I'll give you this window here to take care of it, and if not, then you have to get hardcore, because especially now
with the laws are horrible.
The laws now, it used to be you could give somebody a 30-day notice, and right after I left California, they upped it to 60 days, and I think it's even higher now.
It's like 90 days here.
Yeah.
They live here 1 year, it's 90 days. But those are all rules that are being pushed by the Democratic legislators up there. They're always trying to make it better for them, not the landlords or the people that own the property or the people that pay taxes.
Right.
That's what I see. I'm like,
yeah, and these are components of your constituency as well, and you want to have those people, because if you don't have those people, then you don't have housing for anybody that can't buy it outright.
Yeah. Everything that passes they're doing is kind of counterproductive of which we have a history of doing things right. And now it's like, well, they need free, or you can't raise the rent. But on the other hand, when they talk about affordability, the way I see it is, why do you make everything unaffordable? Like, you go after electricity, you go after all these other things that are cost a landlord to have to raise the rent.
Hey, you know what? If we cut timber, we'd have cheap 2x4s. If we lowered the permitting cost to get housing going, and maybe it would even be a smart thing to just forego charging people for permits, and just say, hey, we want you to build, and this is part of what you're paying taxes for, and because we want to facilitate housing. That would be a way to actually show the will that you wanted to do that.
Yes.
And
they do not get that. Well, let's say the grants passed for a lot to do a single family home, and it's going to cost you $25,000 and fees and permits before you even built anything. That's how much you're going to pay to get something done.
In California in 1992, I built a house, cost me about almost $30,000 before I put a shovel in the dirt. And it's much, much higher now. Much, much higher. And when I came here and I heard the fees that they were paying to get things done here, it was dramatically lower. But it's catching up.
It's catching up. And it's not like home builder, contractors are charging a price but they only get margins. Their margins are only so much.
Right.
I mean, they're not going to build a house that they can't get $500,000 if it's only worth $400,000. But they don't understand. No one understands. These people, these Democrats, don't understand how everything works.
Well, and the funny thing is that I always refer to this as like Vanessa on the city council, and she referred to market failure.
Market failure, yes.
Market failure. Market failure is when you make stuff so expensive that nobody can afford to do it. So the private sector failed at building new housing. Well, no, you made it too expensive. And so they used their free will to not do it. Yes. And then, the outcome of that is, an obvious foregone conclusion.
Yeah. In our capitalism system, if it's affordable, we'd be building houses left and right.
Yes, we would.
We would be building them, and there'd be contractors and we people coming here to work and do that. But we make it unaffordable. The numbers and margins are small. Then people don't come here. They don't want to buy houses here. They want to go somewhere else. It's cheaper to live. I have kids that are in their 20s, and they're like, it's unaffordable for them to buy a house here.
Right.
Unless I help them do that.
Right.
I mean, that's just not how it should be.
Yeah.
When they have realistically pretty decent jobs. This is all self. We did this to ourselves.
Yes.
But when people start complaining, I'm like, well, look who we put in the office up north. Look what you did. You didn't even turn out the vote. Look at the vote here recently. Was it 17, 19%?
Yeah, it was pathetic.
And then you want to complain about something. That's kind of, as now that I'm in politics for the last 2.5 years, I'm like, you didn't even show up yourself. But you're straight ready to complain about everything. Why isn't this way? Well, because you didn't even voice your opinion on the smallest thing you can do is vote here. It's the easiest thing.
Yeah.
I don't even like the mail-in voting, and it's the easiest. And
it is super easy.
It comes to your house, you fill it out, and you could throw it back in your mailbox.
I always take it to the ballot drop.
I take it in too, but I mean, they can't even do that.
Yeah, it is too bad. Listen, in this country, you have a civic responsibility of by and for the people. That includes you. And it requires that a populace be educated and understand, the governing process. And it doesn't really take that much paying attention to have an understanding of it, but far too few people,
What kind of ties in why I'm in call of action is I need my constituents. I need people here in Oregon. I need Josephine County people to say, tell the legislators, not just me, but every legislator up there, we're tired of dealing with this. They need to let them know. I mean, they could go and complain at a city, a meeting. That's fine, but they're not the ones that could change the law. The only people who could change HB3115 is by voicing your opinion. You call the legislators, you email the legislators, or you go up there and knock on their door.
Yes. I mean, the takeaway from this is, I bitch about politics on this show all the time. Here's somebody who's actually in a place to do something about it. Now, you may not like Dwayne Yunker, but, maybe you see what's going on, that HB3115 is bad. And it is counterproductive, and it's not helping anybody. Most, at the top of that list, the Citizens Grants Pass. It's your responsibility. And so your call to action, you have a website, don't you, that has all of the contact information of these legislators?
Yeah, you can either go to, which is OLIS, which is the state website, and you can look at all the web, but you could also go to, either my social media page, which is, Rep. Dwayne Yunker, or Rep. Dwayne Yunker on X, both Facebook and X. And then I put the call action on there. It says what legislators voted no on. You can hit them, or you can hit everybody. I mean, when we're looking for things to pass up there, they want to hear from the public. I've learned this out this very short time I've been there. And I was like, I can yell and scream all I want, but if the public's not saying anything, they don't really care.
But if the public backed you, it would be unstoppable, really.
Well, we'll look at the fire map thing.
Yeah, the fire map is a perfect example.
Exactly. Everybody was, I'm going to say it, pissed off.
Right.
And we had emails just coming through constantly. Now, it's not over yet, but there was enough pressure to say, we want this turned over.
Well,
and that was not just Republicans. That was Democrat, Republicans, Independent, whatever you were ticked off because it's affecting their property.
That's right.
So is this affecting your property right here in the Middle East? Is it affecting your business in here in town? If it is, I think it is, because I've talked to some people, and I say, who can change that law? Legislators can change that law. So the short term is we only have a few more weeks left. I'm going to continue to fight to the end. But maybe we could put enough pressure on the short session next year or get a hearing and people testify and say, well, how is it affecting their business? How is it affecting their home life? You know, they don't feel safe with their kids here. You've made us set this homeless camp up. And I guarantee they're going to try to say, no, we didn't. But the laws, we all...
Hello. This is why the city council ended up having to capitulate and do all this extra stuff, is because the law and the judgment by this local judge forced them to do it. Yeah. Otherwise, they wouldn't have.
Well, we all knew J Street was a disaster. It was a disaster. It's right down the street from here. I mean, the businesses were getting taken care of. It was a lawlessness. It was a horrible. We didn't want that. The people in the city didn't want that. Now, there might be a few that, the whatever.
Well, there were some people who lived next to the parks, and when the homeless left the parks, they were, all right, man, that's great. And I don't blame them at all, but it just moved it to a different area. Now, the difference between this issue and the fire map is the fire map is talking about your house.
Yes.
And this isn't talking about your house unless you happen to live across the street from it.
If you live on 5th Street.
Oh, my God.
Or A Street, you got to be mad. I know you have to be mad. I would be mad that I could not go out and sit on my porch and not look at something crazy, or wake up in the middle of the night and my camera going off and someone trying to steal something from me or my car.
Or listen, you know what? Or just the robbing of your quiet enjoyment of your property, putting your life at risk.
Yes.
These are serious things. And you know what? If you care about other people in Grants Pass, listen, I live in a rural area. None of this is going on in my neighborhood. The fire map came to my neighborhood,
Yep.
But the homeless issue isn't. But I have a business here in Grants Pass, and ultimately, I don't want negativity chipping away at, my future or anybody else's future in this town. And if you care about other people in this town, even if it's not in your neighborhood, you got to do something about this.
You definitely got to tell someone above our city council. I've sat down with, I had a meeting with them on Friday, the mayor, city manager, and the council president here at the city. And I said, hey, the same thing. I said, I need your help. If you want me to help you, I need your help. I'm asking the public to do the same thing. I need your help. I can't do this alone. I can, again, if you've seen my speeches, I'll get up on the floor and I can yell and scream and do whatever, but I only get 3 minutes. Guess what? There's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of people out there that can take just 5 minutes of their life, send off an email and say, we're tired of this. We want this fixed. This HB3115 has got to be repealed. We need our enjoyment back from our city. We're not asking to get rid of homeless people. What we are is asking for accountability. Yeah. That's what we want, is accountability. If someone, I've always said this, if someone wants to run a nonprofit, that's their right. But it is also our right as someone that lives in the city to enjoy this city just like everybody else. I should be able to walk down the city with my wife or my adult kids and enjoy it and not have to worry about a zombie land over here that's not safe, right across from basically our city hall and courthouse.
Yeah, and is unsanitary and looks disgusting and runs off potential business that's coming to this town.
When I come home, I usually come home Thursday night, and that's the first thing I come in. I come off the the north exit, coming to town, and then I just know I'm back in the Grants Pass. I just know it because I could start seeing it, feeling it. My daughter works a coffee stand. She doesn't feel safe sometimes working the early morning with the coffee stand. That's not enjoyable. Everybody should feel safe here. If they're not a Republican like myself, everybody should enjoy the city and have a right to enjoyment. Be able to sit there on G Street and eat and enjoy this together, because this is our community. If it's First Friday, you should just feel like you belong here and do whatever. We can have disagreements on a lot of things, but enjoyment of the city, I think all of us want that. And that's why I'm asking for help. Is like, hey, I need your voice. And maybe we don't get it in the next 30 days. But guess what? We're going to hit it again next year. I'm going to have this, another bill there, and I'm going to try to repeal it. I'm not stop fighting it. And this is our city, and I want it back. Even just like I was on city council, I hated it. I want to enjoy the same city that I grew up as a child here and feel free to kids ride their bikes or whatever. I don't want this drug, fest going on. I don't want people finding needles. I don't want them finding drugs in the street. I want a clean city and to enjoy, just like we should be able to. We pay taxes. We pay a lot of taxes. Yeah. And I
always mention to people, there's a social contract there. That when I moved here, I go, okay, I'm reading on the real estate form what my taxes are every year. That's what I pay for the services rendered by government. And I want that. Yeah. And part of that agreement, part of that understanding, that social contract is public safety. And you cannot ensure public safety when there's more criminals than the police can handle. And then there's also an issue with perhaps the will on the part of the police, because the DA is not going to prosecute some of these cases, and some of their policy as it relates to prosecuting crimes comes from the state.
Yes.
And so there's a leniency there that has to be dealt with. It's a totally separate issue.
There is. And since 2021, we have lowered so much things. You can't even pull someone over for a tail light out now. The person that testified that legislature, it's racist. All these little stupid things. Like, well, I thought a tail light was safety. That's when I go to the DMV to take my driving test.
It's the product of woke government. Basically.
Yes, everything is, you're preying on people, I should say. No, we want a safe environment. I think if we could clean up the homeless problem, we will be able to fill our empty vacancies with the law enforcement, because we have because people want to work here. If we had a safe, what does a cop want to come here and all they're going to deal with is homeless problems? Yeah. Why? They don't want to do that. Cops don't go like, I can't wait to deal with homeless problems today. That's right. Get up and go to work. No, they want to deal with the other problems that keep people safe. There's other crimes going on, but they're too busy dealing with A and 6th Street all day long, or whatever that, drugs or whatever coming in here. Everything would change. I just feel if we got rid of this problem, a lot of our law enforcement would be able to deal with the stuff that we pay them to do, instead of dealing with this homeless influx of people coming here. And I know there's more people coming here. I call people all the time, and that's become another part of my job. And they're like, yeah, we're seeing a lot more people come here. Well, of course, because the rules were just changed. Go to Grants Pass. Right. We always had homeless people here.
And if I was in some city down in Northern California that was being overrun by homeless people, I'd say, hey, up the road, Grants Pass. Yeah, I'll take care of you. Yeah. And I'm sure some of these people have friends, and they're calling their friends up saying, hey, they're giving us free everything. Why wouldn't you come?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you leave somewhere else and go somewhere where they can let you live your lifestyle? I interviewed this guy that was that kind of lived in Seattle, and it was probably about 15 years ago. He was telling me how he can go from each spot. He can get breakfast, he can get his meal somewhere, he got his mail, his medication. His whole day was just going around to these nonprofits. He's like, yeah, I don't have to work. I just go to all these things. And I was like, and he wasn't even a drug addict. He was just telling me how all this worked. And I was just amazed. Well, of course he doesn't have to work. All his needs are being taken care of.
Right.
I mean, it's like getting rid of the 35-year-old in your basement that mom and dad are paying for. That's what we got here.
Even if these people were just a bunch of lazy hobos, that would be way, way better than the drug situation. If all you had to do was pull a bus up, and serve these people meals 3 times a day, it would be a hell of a lot less of a burden than all the drug addicts.
Yeah, like the old hippie kind of people. You know what I'm saying? They run around their bus and do their thing, and they didn't kind of live on the lifestyle. That's not what we have here. Yeah. This is not the hippie, I don't want to kind of government kind of thing. These are crazy drug addicts causing problem. Hippies, I grew up here. There's always been hippies with buses with pipes, and out of the ceiling and whatever. They didn't bother no man. They're a little bit different. Yeah. But they weren't stealing my stuff. You know what I'm saying? I left my bicycle outside. They weren't going to steal as a kid. These people are different. This is a different class of homeless people. I really get aggravated sometimes when they put all homeless people in one category. It does bother me because I'm like,
I talk about it every day.
These are drug addicts. These are mentally ill people. These are lazy people. And then there's the category of people that, you and I talked about earlier that just need a little help. Yeah. And those are the people like, hey, let's get them help, get them moving on their way, what they got to do. And let's focus on them because they want to change. This 6th and 8th Street, that's not change. Yeah. That's just horrible. Yeah.
I agree. Well, I'm going to put the link to Dwayne's call to action in the comment section of this on the Mike on Mike podcast page, and I'll also put it in the description on the video posted to YouTube. So there you go. There's your call to action. Go do it. Thanks for joining me, Dwayne.
I appreciate the help. Thanks for letting me come on here, and I hope people that if they want change, they're going to have to start complaining higher up, because it's not our local people, that local government that's their hands are being tied by a horrible law.
It's by the people time. Yeah, it's by the people time, and you know what? As we discussed earlier with the fire map thing, if people are motivated, this thing goes away. If they're not, well, we got nobody to blame but ourselves.
I would agree. It's going to take a movement to change this from what we don't want. If we're not going to stand up and do it as a movement, we'll be dealing with this for years and years and years.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne.